welcome back to my channel. I'm Sonnet, the owner and creator behind Sonnet's Garden Blooms, and in today's video, you are getting a thrift to treasure. So I am taking 5 items that I've recently thrifted, and I am going to transform them for antique acres. I recently thrifted both of these. Anytime I see a cutting board, I'm a sucker for them. And initially I had thought maybe using some recycled paper on these like I had in the past. But then I started thinking, and I am going to use Chateau on these 2 hutches that I'm going to be flipping. I thought, what a perfect opportunity to tie that paint inlay into the whole vignette. I initially had grabbed Farm Fresh and I thought, oh, this will look beautiful. The pop of color with Farm Fresh and the paint inlay. Then I decided, nope, I'm going to use vintage linen. I use a lot of color in my booth displays, and I also like to incorporate some white in throughout to kind of like neutralize all the colors that I'm using. So I am applying right now 1 even coat of vintage linen to both of the cutting boards. Anytime you're using a paint inlay, you want the first coat down, you want it to dry very well, and then when you apply that second coat, that's when you apply the paint inlay. So this is the paint inlay that I was talking about, Chateau from IOD, and all the supplies that I'm using in today's video can be found out on my website at www.sonnetsgardenblooms.com. I will have it also linked in the description, and I have fixed the link so it will go to my new website versus my old. But I wanted to show you this. This is a beautiful paint inlay. So you can use it on a piece of furniture or smalls like I'm doing here. And I love the colors. So you can see there's Farm Fresh in there. There's all different, just amazingly beautiful colors in this paint inlay. So I'm super excited to get using it. So initially what I do is I line up how I want the paint inlay to lay on the cutting board before I even apply any paint. I want a vision or an idea of how it's actually going to appear. So once I do that, then I go ahead and I apply another coat of paint. And you want just a nice even coat of the paint that you're using. And a paint inlay has to be used with a chalk style paint. So DIY paint is a clay-based paint, which works as well. And again, just 1 even layer of the paint down. And then what I recommend doing is start on one edge and then work my way up. So start rubbing it to try to eliminate as many wrinkles as possible. And it's much easier to do this on a much smaller scale. If you do get wrinkles, I think I would embrace it, and I think it just adds to the beauty of the piece. In this one, there were a couple wrinkles because I think I laid it down too quick, but I thought it turned out amazing. So I take my finger, I just rub it. You can also use a brayer to really embed that paint inlay in the actual wet paint. From there, you're gonna take your misting bottle or your spray bottle and you're gonna mist the entire paint inlay, and then again, rub it really well, and then you're going to let it dry. Now I'm doing the exact same thing to the secondary cutting board. Again, just applying a nice even layer of paint. From there, I'm going to apply the paint inlay. Always make sure you have the paint side in, like paint to paint. So you'll see there's a gridded background on the back, and then there's that paint on the other side. I have made the mistake, folks. I have accidentally I had flipped it over and I did not have the painted side down, and I had to redo my whole project. Now, again, I just missed it and I let it rub it in, and I'm going to let it dry. I am super excited for the IOD conference because Jonathan Mark Mendez is actually doing a seminar all on paint inlays. So I am really hoping that he has some tips and tricks that I can pick up on and come back and tell you guys. For the final step, you can see they are completely dry, so I'm going to take my misting bottle and a damp rag. I am going to mist the entire piece to just resaturate that paint inlay, and then I'm going to wipe off any of the excess water with that rag or that damp rag. And then what we do is we just start from the top and I just start peeling it back. And honestly, it is so satisfying seeing that beautiful paint inlay embedded into the paint that you had initially laid down. I just love this process. And keep in mind, the second thing I do want to mention is that you can use a paint inlay multiple times. I did showcase this over on my Facebook page. I did a live video and I showed how I used a paint inlay. I think I used it up to 4 times or 3 to 4 times on the video, but it was so cool to see that you can continue to reuse it. It is not as vibrant the second or third time around, but it almost gives you a kind of like an aged appearance, so like distressed. I loved it. Whenever I'm creating vignettes, I do like to have things in either like a 1, 3, or 5s. And I was really getting a little like stressed out that I only had 2 cutting boards. So I went into my stash, I found this one, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's gonna be perfect. It will really complement the other 2 because I like the roundness of it. And I thought farm fresh for this one. So I applied 1 even layer, I let it dry, came back, and I'm doing the exact same thing that I did with the other 2. Applying that second coat, then laying the paint inlay down and rubbing it in, and then misting it and rubbing it again to really embed that paint inlay into your wet paint. Now, paint inlays can seem really intimidating because I know that they are a fairly new product, but once you get used to using them, they are so fun, and you can use them for both furniture pieces and your smalls. And again, you can reuse them so you can get multiple uses out of them. So it's not like just one and done. So always remember that too. Lastly, you want to seal your piece. And because you're dealing with paint, if you put too much pressure on with the paintbrush on the actual paint inlay, you can smear it. So that is one thing I've heard a lot is, oh, I apply the clear coat and then I smear it. What I do is I really load up my paintbrush with a Big Top or a poly, and with a very light hand, I apply the clear coat to it. And I let it dry, go back, and I apply a second coat, and then your whole project is completely sealed and ready for whatever you want to use it for. Next up are these little apples that I recently thrifted, and these were definitely different than the wax ones that I have done in the past. So I did apply 2 even coats of sandy blonde to all of the apples. I let them dry very thoroughly, and then I sealed them. And when I went and sealed them, I had mega bleed through. It was really bad. I should have showed you, but there was so much bleed through that I went back, I repainted them again, and then I resealed them with Big Top. And honestly, there was still a little bit of bleed through, but I was not going to take the time and repaint and reseal again. So I embraced just the little bit of red that was popping through. And I then from there decided to take white wax and white wax them. And this is when we had some technical difficulties. So I thought I had hit record, but unfortunately I did not. I had hit I hit the button twice. Let's just say it that way. I hit the button twice, and unfortunately, I did not capture any of that. But basically, to apply the white wax, I just added a complete layer, just like I'm doing here with the sealer. And then I took a piece of paper towel and wiped off any excess. And I just love this look. It creates like a cement type of look on these. When I was at Goodwill this last time, I did run into a viewer, and she came up and introduced herself, and then she came back and she's like, "Look what I found for you." I said, "Absolutely, I'll grab this and I will flip it and I will showcase it on a future video." So right away I grabbed it for today's video, and I just like little boxes like this. I think they add so much to any vignette, and they're really easy to flip and you can store things in them. So this one was super cute. I was not digging the lemons nor the color. So because I'm using Farm Fresh, today we are breaking out Farm Fresh to do this flip. I do like distressing if you've been watching for a while. So I decided I was going to distress the box back a bit and bring out some of the red. So I'm still embracing this like burgundy-ish red color, but I didn't want the whole box that color. So again, I'm applying 2 even coats of Farm Fresh to the entire box. And initially I was just going to paint it. That was my vision until I was waiting for that second coat to dry, and I'm like, it would be really cool to put Chateau on top. So then I decided that's what I was going to do. Just put that paint inlay right on the top of this box. And because I've shown how to apply it quite a few times, here is another glimpse of me removing it. Again, just misting it and then pulling it back, and then you can see that paint inlay completely embedded in there. And I absolutely love how this turned out. Now I'm grabbing a damp rag and I am going to wet distress this. You can use a piece of sandpaper and distress back with the sandpaper as well, but wet distressing, like I've shown or talked about in the past, it really gives you more control over your piece, plus it allows you to have less dust. And I just randomly wet distress over any of the raised areas. So I go along all the top edges, on the sides, even tip it over, and I do the very bottom edge. I open up the container and I do on the inside edges as well. I just want to do it randomly all over just so it looks natural, and then it brings out a little bit of that burgundy red from underneath. Now that it's completely dry, I'm going back with Big Top and sealing the entire piece. Again, just on the top, I start there and I really load up my paintbrush with the sealer. And again, not a lot of pressure. And once that's done, I don't go back and I don't touch it again. And then I completely seal the entire piece. I should note that anytime you're working with DIY paint, it is a clay-based paint that can be reactivated with water, so it's great for blending. Because of that, you do have to seal your paint. If you do not, at any point, the paint can be reactivated. So by sealing it, it hardens the clay-based paint. And so I recommend sealing it with a type of poly or Big Top. You can use any type of wax as well. I grabbed this container because I thought it would be perfect to hold those little apples, and I painted it vintage linen from DIY. And when I had some technical difficulties with the wax video, I also had some technical difficulties painting, showing you the painting. But you guys all have seen me paint objects. So in between painting, I always do try to zap it with the heat gun. It just speeds up the whole process, especially when I'm videotaping. So I applied 2 even coats of vintage linen to this little silver tray, and I love these little trays, and I love all like the little teapots because they have such beautiful detail on them. So when you paint them and then wet distress them back, it just brings out all that beautiful detail, like these little handles, and then they have these little claw feet. So I just went and randomly distressed it, rubbed the wet rag over all those raised areas, and just let it naturally show whatever detail that it wanted to let through. Anytime I'm out thrifting, I always grab frames when I see them. I did grab this one out of the bins. It was just been tossed aside. I loved the detail on this. So I am using the new paintbrush called the Perfectionist, and you guys, I love this brush. I can't tell you guys enough how I'm loving all the new brushes from DIY, but this one gets into all those little details of this frame. So I am using the color Cherry Picked, and I actually had a container that somebody damaged at one of my stores. So even though, you would think not to open a container because I do have the paint samples right there with the color, somebody did try to open it. So I could not resell this. And I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to use it because in that paint inlay Chateau, it has some of that, cherry burgundy-ish color as well. So I'm embracing it, and we're going to go with it because I'm going to put this all in the same vignette. And I'm applying 2 even coats of Cherry Picked to this piece. So next up, I am going to wet distress this. Initially, I was not going to do this. What my vision was I was going to seal it, and I wanted to use white wax on it and really bring out the detail with the white wax. But then I thought the white wax might change the that cherry color a little bit. It would obviously make it a little bit whiter. So that's not really the look I was going for, even though I love using white wax and bringing out all the detail that way. I broke out the damp rag again, and I just let it just come to life. I just rubbed all over, and whatever detail popped through, and I really love how that gold is popping through this cherry picked color. And I did the edges as well, and I did it random here and there. I let it completely dry, and then we're going to come back and seal it. So with all these projects in today's video, I really was trying to coordinate all of them for this specific vignette. And in many cases, you don't even have to do a lot to an item to completely change its appearance. So for instance, this one, all I did was add a little paint, distressed it, and this looks absolutely different. And I think it's going to look beautiful within the vignette. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. The inspiration behind today's video were 2 hutches that I did purchase over at Habitat, and I had planned on starting those, getting those ready, and actually having them done by the time I left for California. Unfortunately, I'm juggling so many balls right now that did not happen, but that is the way of life. Sometimes something's got to be moved off of the to-do list so that I can get everything else done. So I have a vision for those hutches, and the true inspiration is it's going to be like farm fresh, vintage linen, that paint inlay Chateau. So little tidbits. So you are going to see those on definitely a future video, or at least a glimpse of them. I don't know if I'll do an entire video on just the hutches. Probably there's going to be a video for prepping for antique acres or something like that, because believe me, it's going to be go time when I get back from California. The next weekend I will be nonstop working on everything that I need to pull together for that event, and which is May 19th and 20th. So with that said, as you guys are watching this, I will already be in California. I'm actually taping this right before I leave for my flight. I'm flying out at 2:50 on Sunday, so I am wrapping the whole video up. I wanted to get it out there for you. And then Friday's video is going to be a wrap up of the whole event at the IOD conference event. So I'm super excited to show you like a lot of behind the scenes. I will definitely be posting, I'm sure, like photos, reels, things like that over on my Facebook page. So if you want to kind of be in the know of what's going on, who I'm meeting, things like that, or what we're doing, head on over there if you haven't already. Give me a follow. But otherwise, Friday's video will be a total wrap up of the event. All right. Well, you guys have yourselves a great week, and we will see you Friday. Bye. Bye.